Rome, sometime in the 1st century. A slave named Epictetus sits in his master's house with a leg that will never fully work again, broken, most accounts say by his own owner, and left to heal crooked. He will spend the rest of his life walking with a limp he did not choose and could not undo. And somehow, that same man will go on to write one of the most useful sentences in the history of philosophy. His name becomes Epictetus, and the sentence he leaves behind splits the entire world into exactly two piles: the things that are up to us, and the things that are not, and almost everything we suffer over, he argues, comes from confusing which pile something belongs in. His body was not up to him. His legal status was not up to him. Even the exact moment his leg snapped under someone else's hand was not up to him. But his opinion about it, what he decided that injury meant, what story he told himself about who he still got to be, that, he insisted, stayed entirely his every single day for the rest of his life. Centuries later, a very different kind of thinker would take that same idea and push it one uncomfortable step further, from merely accepting what you can't control to actively loving it, a phrase he'd call in Latin, Amor Fati. Not gritted teeth endurance, not looking away, an actual deliberate love for the exact life fate handed you, scars and all. That phrase, and the 22 centuries of Stoic thinking that made it possible, is what this film is actually about. To understand how a crippled slave's formula turns, generations later, into a demand to love your own fate, we have to go back to the beginning of that formula itself, and figure out exactly what Epictetus meant by up to us. Epictetus was born a slave around 55 AD in what is now Turkey, and by the time he's writing philosophy, his owner is Epictetus, a former slave himself and secretary to the Emperor Nero. Somewhere in that household, tradition says, Epictetus twisted Epictetus's leg as a punishment, and kept twisting even as the young philosopher calmly warned him it would break. It broke. Epictetus reportedly just said, "I told you so." That composure isn't a personality trait. He insists. It's a skill, built entirely on one dividing line, sorting every event in your life into things governed by your own judgment and things governed by literally everything else. In the first pile up to us, our judgments, our impulses, our desires, our aversions, in short, our own actions, the only territory a human being actually owns outright. In the second pile, not up to us, our body, our property, our reputation, our position, even Epictetus says bluntly, whether we live or die tomorrow, all of it ultimately on loan. Eventually, Epictetus is freed and starts teaching in Rome, then Nicopolis in Greece, after the Emperor Domitian expels all philosophers from the capital, a second forced exile he treats with the same shrug he gave his own leg. Students flock to him anyway because he isn't selling comfort. He's selling a kind of leverage. Stop spending your limited attention fighting for control over things that were never yours to control. Redirect every bit of that same energy toward the one thing that actually is yours. And suddenly, you're not fighting the world anymore. You're just doing your job in it. Notice what this isn't. It isn't nothing matters, it's the opposite, a ruthless focus on the one lever you actually have. If you've ever exhausted yourself trying to control someone else's opinion of you, sit with that for a second and stay with us, because a Roman emperor is about to take this same idea into the middle of a war. 100 years after Epictetus, a Roman emperor is reading him. Marcus Aurelius keeps a copy of the discourses close enough that his own private notebook quotes Epictetus by name more than once. But Marcus isn't writing from a lecture hall. He's writing from a military tent on the Danube frontier, fighting the Marcomanni, a war that will eat most of the final decade of his life. He never meant for anyone to read what he wrote there. Meditations is a private notebook, self-addressed reminders scribbled between battles and plagues and a son's death, and one idea shows up in it again and again. The obstacle itself is the way through. Marcus takes Epictetus's dividing line and adds a move of his own. Since the external event isn't up to you anyway, stop treating it as an interruption to your task and start treating it as the raw material of your task. A blocked road doesn't cancel the journey, he writes. The mind adapts and turns the obstacle itself into the next step forward. What stands in your way becomes the way. This is not abstract for him. In 166 AD, the Antonine Plague arrives with returning soldiers and kills, by some estimates, 5 million people across the empire over the following decades. Marcus loses colleagues, possibly children, and keeps commanding a war from a plague-emptied camp anyway, because retreating into despair was not, in his own accounting, up to the moment's demands. He wasn't grateful for the plague. He was refusing to let a thing he couldn't undo also take the one thing he could still direct, his own next action. Here's the upgrade Marcus adds to Epictetus's formula. Don't just withdraw your judgment from what you can't control, actively repurpose it as fuel for what you can. If a setback this week has been sitting in your way like a wall, comment the obstacle you're currently staring at, because we're about to find out where this idea actually comes from. Marcus and Epictetus both inherited a much older piece of machinery, built 2 centuries earlier by a Stoic named Chrysippus, the philosopher who took a scattered set of Stoic sayings and turned them into an actual logical system. Chrysippus's problem was a hard one. If literally everything is fated, determined by an unbroken chain of prior causes, how can anything a person does still be called their own choice? His answer survives as a single image. Push a cylinder and push a cone with the same amount of force. The cylinder rolls smoothly forward. The cone wobbles and spins in place, because each one moves according to its own nature, not just the push it received. Fate in this analogy supplies the initial push, the circumstances you're born into, the accident you didn't see coming, the diagnosis, the layoff, none of which you authored. But how you roll, the shape of your character meeting that push, comes from you. The same event lands on 2 different people and produces 2 entirely different outcomes because they weren't the same shape to begin with. This is the hinge the whole Stoic system turns on. Fate and freedom were never actually opposites for them. Your choices are fully part of the causal chain, not exceptions to it, but they are still authentically yours, because nothing else could have made them except your own particular character. It's a strange, demanding position to hold. It means you don't get to blame the push for how you rolled. It also means the push genuinely wasn't your fault in the first place. Both have stayed true at once. That's the piece of machinery Cleanthes, Chrysippus's own teacher, is about to turn into an actual demand. Sit with the cylinder for a second. The push isn't yours, but the shape that meets it is entirely yours, built one choice at a time. If this reframe just made one specific bad break in your life look different, like this video and keep going, because next is the line that gives this whole idea its teeth. Cleanthes leads the Stoic school after its founder Zeno dies, and he leaves behind a poem, the hymn to Zeus, that does something Chrysippus's cylinder never quite does. It turns a logical position into an emotional one. Cleanthes doesn't just say fate is fair. He asks in verse to be led by it willingly, because the alternative, he says, is being dragged. The image later writers attach to this idea is a dog tied to a moving cart. The cart is going wherever the cart is going regardless. The dog has exactly one real choice left: trot alongside it or get dragged behind it, arriving at the identical destination either way, just badly bruised. This is the moment Stoicism stops being a philosophy of mere endurance and becomes something closer to a philosophy of consent. Epictetus gave you the dividing line. Marcus showed you how to repurpose what's on the wrong side of it. Cleanthes asks for something harder than both. Don't just tolerate the cart's direction. Choose it. Walk like the direction was yours all along, because fighting the leash was always the more painful option, and it never once changed where the cart was headed. This gets misread constantly as fatalism, shrug, give up, stop trying. It's the opposite. The dog still has to trot. It still has to use its legs, still has to navigate the specific terrain in front of it. What Cleanthes removes is the wasted second fight, the one against the direction itself, the one that changes nothing except how bruised you get on the way there. This is the exact hinge where Amor Fati, love of fate, stops being a nice phrase and starts being a genuine demand on how you live. This is the line worth sitting with the longest in this entire film. You don't get a vote on the cart's direction, only on whether you walk or get dragged. If you've been getting dragged through something lately, tell us in the comments what your cart is right now, because up next, a philosopher who hated the Stoics takes their exact phrase and pushes it somewhere they never intended. 18 centuries later, a sickly, half-blind German philosopher who spent much of his career attacking Stoicism sits down, and almost despite himself, borrows their exact Latin phrase. Friedrich Nietzsche writes in The Gay Science that he wants to learn to see what is necessary in things as beautiful, and he gives that wanting a name: Amor Fati, love of fate. The same two words Cleanthes' cart image had been circling for 2,000 years. But Nietzsche strips out the part of the Stoic version that made it bearable. The Stoics believed the universe was rational and provident, run by a logos that was, on some level, looking out for you. Nietzsche believed no such thing. His universe hands out the exact same cart ride, with absolutely no promise it's headed anywhere fair. He sharpens the demand into a thought experiment. What if a demon told you that you'd have to live this exact life again, every joy and every crushing detail, in the same sequence forever, on an endless loop? Would that news crush you, or would you fall to your knees and call it the greatest thing you'd ever heard? Nietzsche calls that second reaction the heaviest weight, and treats it as the actual test of whether you've achieved Amor Fati or just talked about it. So here's the real difference between the Stoic version and Nietzsche's. The Stoics can love their fate because they believe, in some deep structural sense, it was designed with them in mind, a rational cosmos doing its rational job. Nietzsche has to love his with zero such comfort. No designer, no plan, no cosmic favor, which is, by his own account, exactly what makes his version the harder, more honest achievement. Two philosophies, 18 centuries apart, arrive at the same three words from completely opposite directions, and somehow both mean them as the highest praise a life can receive. Try Nietzsche's test honestly for one memory right now, not the easy ones, the hard one. Could you want it again, exactly as it happened? If the honest answer is no, that's useful information, not a failure, and it's exactly what the next part of this film is for. So subscribe before we get to how you actually practice this. None of this stays useful as a slogan. So here is the actual mechanics the Stoics left behind for building it. 3 tools, all still perfectly usable. None of them requiring you to believe in a rational cosmos or a demon with a thought experiment. The first is Epictetus' own line, the one modern cognitive therapy quietly rebuilt centuries later. People are disturbed not by events themselves, but by the opinions they form about those events. Separate the bare fact from the story you're telling about the fact, the diagnosis from the catastrophizing, the rejection from the verdict on your worth, and you've already done half the work Epictetus is asking for. The second tool is premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, deliberately, calmly imagining loss before it arrives, not to invite anxiety but to drain it. So the actual event, if it comes, meets a mind that already walked through it once. Seneca practiced this on his own wealth, mentally rehearsing exile and poverty while still rich, precisely so neither could ambush him later. Rehearsed loss lands lighter than loss you refuse to imagine. The third is what Marcus called the view from above, mentally rising until your entire crisis shrinks to a dot on a rotating planet. One life among billions, one grievance in an ocean of them. It sounds like it should feel small and cold. In practice, most people report the opposite. It feels like relief, because the thing crushing you was never actually as large as it felt from inside it. 3 tools. Separate fact from story. Rehearse the fall before it comes. Zoom out until the crisis fits back into scale. None of them erase what happened. All 3 change how much it costs you to carry it. Pick one of the 3 tools and use it today on something small, before you ever need it on something large. The muscle only exists if you've built it before the emergency. If you've made it this far, you already care more about this than most people ever will. So hit subscribe, drop a comment on which of the 3 tools you're starting with, and let's close this out with where the whole phrase ends up. Here's what should surprise you. A crippled slave's dividing line, an emperor's wartime notebook, a poem about a dog and a cart, and a half-blind atheist's hardest demand on himself all funnel into the exact same 2-word phrase, still doing work today. 20th century psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, surviving Auschwitz, arrives at a strikingly similar formula on his own. Everything can be taken from a person but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, the choice of one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Modern cognitive behavioral therapy, built in the 1950s and 60s, cites Epictetus directly as an intellectual ancestor. Resilience research keeps rediscovering, in laboratory language, roughly what Cleanthes said in verse. People who feel a sense of chosen participation in hardship recover faster than people who feel merely dragged through it. None of these thinkers agreed on everything. Chrysippus and Nietzsche would have argued for hours about whether the universe has a mind behind it at all. But every single one of them, independently across 2,000 years, landed on the same conclusion. The events aren't yours to pick. What you do with them, every time, still is. This is not an easy philosophy, and this film has no interest in pretending it is. Loving a diagnosis, a death, a betrayal, is not the same as pretending it doesn't hurt. It means refusing to let the part you didn't choose also swallow the part you still do. Your next judgment, your next action, your own shape meeting whatever push just arrived. That is the whole inheritance, from a Roman slave's leg to a German philosopher's demon, boiled down to one sentence you can actually use this week. You will not get to choose most of what happens to you this year. You will get to choose every single time, whether you meet it like the dog trotting alongside the cart or the dog getting dragged behind it. Same destination either way, entirely different trip. Pick one hard thing in your life right now and practice, just once today, wanting it exactly as it happened. If this is the kind of thinking that changes how you carry things, subscribe for the next film in this series, and tell us in the comments, what's the one thing in your life you're finally ready to stop fighting and start walking beside?